Derek Turner. Hey,
Jason
brother.
Clark, Jason
Hey.
L. Clark.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I know what the L is for.
That's my namesake.
Yep,
That's
100%. Love your
listen,
dad.
Lloyd is making a comeback. I've always said
Lloyd
that.
Lloyd, no longer null and void. Sorry, that's a little movie reference there.
In the entirety of my life, I don't know what I've never heard that.
It's okay. It's an 80s thing. I'll fill you in later. But yeah, hey, good to see you. We've got a great interview today.
Yeah.
We got Jared Scholz on.
Yes.
Scholz. Scholz.
Yes.
And you edited his book, Jason.
I did earlier this year. I did. That's how I met him, and how we connected, got to know each other. I helped him edit his book, Sandbox to Museum. I think you got it there. Yeah, which is what we talked about today. It's coming out November 14th. It dives into deconstruction within the church. Jared's a pastor. Right. And we had a great conversation today.
You know, one thing I love about this guy is he's a church guy.
Yeah.
And not just a church structure guy, but the church that Jesus built guy, the one that the gates of hell won't prevail against. That he believes in this plan A of God's. You know, God has a plan A. It's the church, and he doesn't have a plan B. And but church might look different than what we've been used to. And I really appreciate his heart. I enjoyed this conversation so much, and I'm looking forward to future conversations with Jared. Yeah,
we dove into Plan A, God's love for the church, and the fact that it can happen with 2,000 people or 5 people in your living room, and then Jared breaks down his story and how he's had to pastor in the context of this deconstruction movement. I know the book came out of a series he did in his church where he was endeavoring to help folks find grace and understanding in a lot of things.
I'm going to just say that I think prophetically this conversation is one that's going to multiply especially in the Western church.
Yeah.
That there's going to be pastors that are going to begin to start rethinking God, and man, they're going to just start jumping into that Jesus's perfect theology mindset. And wherever they are on their own personal journey, that's a good sign. That's a sign that you can allow doubt into the conversation, and you don't have to feel the pressure to be certain about everything. And we definitely get that kind of humility from Jared. Definitely. I love that about him.
Yeah, and I think you just encapsulated the conversation. You know, he writes a book that recognizes doubt and understands that faith is discovered in that context. And so I'm grateful for him. I love conversing with him. He's a great writer. He's an artist. You know, he actually didn't talk about it, but he comes from a musical background, does talk a little bit until you kind of pick up that on a story. But just a lovely guy to talk to. And I'm looking forward to many, many more conversations.
Yeah, I think our tacos community is going to enjoy this conversation, especially the part about, you know, the blanket statement of having been hurt by, quote, the church.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was people within that church context. The church is still something that Jesus is calling his bride. And so we want to aspire to be transformed to become the kind of church that Jesus died for and established.
Amen.
And Jared hits on that. I think that's probably what I love about him most.
Yeah.
Because I'm in the same boat. I'm a pastor. I lead a church. I've been through 20 different iterations of Derek in that process, and yet people still stay connected in our growth in this thing called, you know, becoming like Jesus. So I love this guy.
I love him too. And in that vein, one of these days I'm going to memorize it. I've edited it enough. River Charlotte.
Oh, the church website.
Yeah.
rivercharlotte.com. rivercharlotte.com. Yeah.
Rivercharlotte.com is where you would find us on Saturday nights, where Derek pastors, doing local church. You can sign up for our mailing list at A Family Story, familystory.org. That keeps you up with Zoom calls that we're having. And also, you can sign up on our Facebook, Rethinking God with Tacos group. We have an Instagram now, Rethinking God with Tacos.
It just got released yesterday.
Yesterday.
Why did
Madeline.
you use a picture of me? Why am I the first thing people see?
And then apparently today or tomorrow, my picture will go up. Maddie is on Instagram.
We're leaving all creative authority over to her, which is great.
Over to Madeline.
I love it.
It's so great. She's putting memes together, connecting folks. You can find us there. Thankful to Brooke, also, who is over our Zooms and helping us organize it on the Facebook. We're just loving doing it. The
team is growing.
It is. Yeah, it is.
And the Tacos Facebook page is growing, and we really, those of you who listen faithfully to the podcast and that are connected with the Facebook group, feel free to invite friends that you think would enjoy the conversations that we're having over there. We've definitely created a culture of kindness, and we also have opportunities over there and on A Family Story for people to give, which we invite people to partner with us. If you believe in what we're doing, you believe in Jason and A Family Story, this is his ministry, and I'll just go ahead and say, since I'm in it too, River Church, we're helping support Jason on a monthly basis, and happy and proud to do it. But we invite you to pray and seek God about some generosity toward keeping this podcast really growing and going, and helping us do more of what we're doing, which is talking about Jesus as perfect theology.
Yeah, I love doing it. I love doing it with you. I love the community that's growing around it, and all of the amazing folks that are participating and helping create a culture of kindness. It's just a beautiful thing. And
so many taco memes. I mean, taco memes for days.
And now you got somewhere to put them. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Love you, man. This is a good conversation.
Too. Yeah. Jared Scholz. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation. No fear in love. There's no fear in love. It's all love here, bro. It's all love. Trust me.
Enough to be scared and excited. That's how you know that you're on the right path right there. We have a saying at our house, scary is fun. And my wife always says sometimes. She throws sometimes. Sometimes scary is fun. Sometimes scary is just dumb. But hey, man, we've been chatting. I hit record. Right. Excited to introduce our Rethinking audience to my friend Jared. I want to say Scholz.
It's good. That'll work.
And we've had this conversation. I know I've asked you that a couple times over the last year, but want to make sure I get it
people
right.
People want to throw a T in there, don't they, Jared?
Oh, they love the U's. They love the T's, Don't
let them throw that T in, man. That's a Scholz all the way.
I get no royalties from the foot doctor, so I'm still waiting for that to happen.
Okay. I like that.
That's good. I don't get any royalties for the Clark bar either, man. So I get it.
Ted Turner, come on, where's mine?
Come on, right.
I want those CNN royalties.
Hey, I met Jared. Has it been a year, man? Have you been working?
Yeah.
Probably the beginning of this year, 2023. So we're getting into that year. Mm-hmm. January, yeah. We connected around your first book, man. Congratulations. And I helped you edit it. And that's how we met. Mm-hmm. And it happened to be on a subject that is near and dear to our heart, Derek's and mine and yours. And a help to the church around the language, putting language around and understanding around deconstruction and reconstruction. And you're a pastor. And man, we hit it off. You're a musician. You're sitting in front of guitars. We had a lot of conversation about our past, a lot of connections there. Is it the church office or is that home?
Church office, yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And man, we hit it off. I dove into the book. The book is Sandbox to Museum. We're going to talk about it a little bit, but brother, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, awesome. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I know it takes a lot of trust, and so I'll say, Jason, thank you, and Derek, it takes even more trust because we're just meeting each other. So thanks for that. It's an honor, it's a privilege. So thanks so much for that. Yeah, my name's Jared, and I currently am in Lawrence, Kansas, home of the KU Jayhawks, and I think at my core, I'm a creative. I like to create stuff. So we flip houses and we make music, and I guess we write books now and pastor a church and do all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's what I tend to find myself doing when I try and do other things. I tend to start creating things. So I think in my core, that's sort of what I'm gifted to do, I guess. And I've got 5 kids and been married 24 years. Yeah. Huh? So our oldest just came out sort of by you guys. I mean, when you're in Kansas, anything is closer to something. When you're talking to someone, you're like, they're definitely closer to you because we're way out here. But she's in Charleston, so she's there for a year doing some stuff there. So I think we might have drove past you guys at some point on the way back. So
That's
anyhow,
cool.
So that's what we're doing here. Honestly,
Tell us about the
some
church.
of the So our church is called Greenhouse Church, and we planted it in 2012, and we helped plant a different church in 2002, and so about 10 years later, and really sort of in that transition period is when my life got fuller, richer, more complex, and a tad bit less secure in that some books happened to me. And I think the core thing that shifted in me was I realized that so much of the curriculum of Jesus was hinging upon us helping other people follow Jesus in real time. And so it started to put some language to why, when my faith is all about me, it still feels empty, even though it's so great. I mean, it's so amazing. It's so, me and God, this is incredible, why it still sort of had a hollow sound. And so that really sent us into a tailspin of we're planting a new church, but what's it going to look like? And so the first 6 years, we had all of our what we would call neighborhood churches meeting in homes on Sunday mornings. Half of them would do that, and then the other half would meet in more of sort of a traditional singing and preaching, kids ministry type thing, and then the next week they would rotate. And so we kind of planted 2 churches at the same time, which I would not recommend. But what it did do is it sealed a DNA in us, and it did more than we thought it would do. And so all the stuff about people helping other people follow Jesus in real time really started to happen when they were in living rooms. And so, I'd be the 5th person to the hospital, as the pastor, I'd be the 5th person to the hospital. And, the poor's bills would get paid, and people were giving away cars, and people were praying out loud for the first time, and people were trusting in Jesus, over dinner. Those sorts of things have marked me, and so so that's been our kind of our experiment here, and it comes with all of its stuff. But watching people who did not feel as though they had the gift set to be in ministry, they own businesses, or they're just concert pianists, or they're musicians, or they code or whatever. To see them get in the game of helping other people follow Jesus has grown them, and that to me is the most rewarding thing that we're doing here.
That's so good.
Yeah. I actually talked about that last Saturday night at our service about where did we get the idea that the highest and loftiest goal was to be in full-time ministry as a pastor or as a church leader or something like that. The reality is that, hey, everybody's in ministry. Really, this is our gathering where we then leave and go. And I'd love to hear more stories about your smaller gatherings, because that's something that we're finding as well. It's the smaller connected groups that are wrestling with big questions, that are involved in each other's lives to the degree that they know when someone needs a meal or is in the hospital or needs a car. And I love that front line of family that, really is the church. There's no difference. That sounds really amazing. I'd love to hear more about how you kind of rethought God. What was your rethinking God moments in the context of church life?
Yeah, that's really good. I think you've touched on a lot of it, just that sort of celebrity thing, why that person's a gifted speaker, therefore they must be closer to God, or they must be used by God more. Just all those sorts of things. That philosophy doesn't hold up when the person who would say, I can't, I'm not fluid, I don't speak well, to see them place their hands on somebody and meet them in a place of need when the professional Christian didn't even notice they were going through it and they were in the same room. It really helps you appreciate, the different giftings that are there. And so, one thing we say here is discipleship is helping people follow Jesus in real time. Yeah. And so for us, relationship is all of a sudden mandatory, because I don't know what your real time is. And so I'm walking with a guy right now. He's in one of my sort of venues for just doing enough relationship to help people follow Jesus, and they help me, so I got 3 or 4 of them at the time. We had our neighborhood church at our house last night, and then I've got a group on Wednesday mornings, and I've got another group of young guys on Fridays. And for me, the whole goal is enough relationship for your real time. And so, a guy we're talking about right now, we're sort of talking about one way to love people is to be attentive and to be responsive. And it's one of my greatest fears of weed culture, which we're in a wild town here. There's plenty of reasons to sort of rethink about what we're doing, but one of them is it makes you less responsive. You're not attentive to need, and that might be the most anti-Christ thing I could think of, is that I could walk into a room and not notice need, not notice hunger, and not know how to jump in.
So good. What I loved about getting to know you, because our relationship was built around your book. As an editor, my job is to help the person I'm working with bring clarity to what the messages that they're carrying, and so that means that I'm going to run into folks that think differently than me. And we probably have some places where we think differently. But what I so loved about connecting with you from the bat, man, from when we first started talking, was what you just shared. It was all over you, that the whole point is love, and that love restrains itself, that love thinks on behalf of restoration and reconciliation. Love is willing to say I was wrong. Love isn't defending an ideology or a theology. It's willing to be uncomfortable. It's willing to walk beside someone who thinks differently, who it's that Emmaus Road Jesus. And I felt that on top of the fact that you're a killer writer, man. Like I could see those skill sets growing, and I was like, man, how much fun is it to work with somebody who really values the art of writing in and by itself. But you tell me a little bit about where you're at, because you've got a church, you've got this movement taking place. This, Derek and I find ourselves talking to folks about deconstruction, and to be quite frank, early on, we've talked about it a lot here. That wasn't a term I even liked. It wasn't one that I would have embraced for myself. It was too destructive in nature. I've never. I've always thought if you tear the whole thing down, then you're left with a mess. and yet I can value the imagery of looking for the cornerstone, which is how we've decided to talk about it. Jesus being
Love it.
perfect theology. Okay, let's help people find that cornerstone so that we can rebuild. The whole purpose of then deconstruction is for the reconciliation of our hearts to God, so we can actually build again. And I felt that, and I know where you're located. The other side of that conversation is that there's those that are just tearing things down. They're just, and it's just destructive in nature, and often they're reacting. I like that you use the phrase responding. They're reacting, and this book dives into that. And actually, from a pastor's perspective, what I'm so thankful for, and I'm going to let you speak in a second, but what I was so thankful for is there's a whole lot of pastors out there that didn't look at those who were deconstructing as sheep, as people. And so it was almost like us and them came into the narrative. And so you were hearing all of these folks who were all these leaders in the church who were dismissive of so many folks who were simply just trying to rediscover what they understood about God, navigating abuses and traumas and hurts, and really trying to find the cornerstone.
Amen.
And here's a pastor, here's Jared Scholz, who I meet, and you're basically saying, hey, stop it. These are God's kids. And so the tone in which you begin to have a conversation about this subject really blessed me, man. Why did you write this book? I know you're seeing the deconstruction movement in your area, and there's a whole lot of reasons why a pastor would just dismiss it, but you've embraced it and wanted to actually bring language and understanding around it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, what a great question. I think because I've got so many stories, every page I have a face, every page I have a face. And I think I remember when I had that conversation with so-and-so, and so this is 20 years of following Jesus, and, which I'm just getting started, but I've taken some good notes over 20 years and I guess sort of noticed trends, and it's easy to hate people you don't know. And so I guess I just developed a real love for people who are in tough places. And I guess this book sort of comes out of like, here's the things I've seen, here's the things I've experienced, here are the reasons I've been given, and here's where they're right, and here's where they could be a little better. And so, on my best day, I think of this book and I go, oh, it's great. Everyone's going to love about half of it. On my worst day, I go, oh, I just wrote a book. Everyone's going to hate at least half of it. But it does tend to have that thing, where from the top, it's like, here's why people are deconstructing. And that's hard for a lot of people. I've lost friends, Jason. We've talked about this, you put words on a page and you can lose friends. And sort of some of the feedback there is, hey man, why are you saying this stuff? Aren't you sort of you're being disrespectful to the church? And I go, well, how's that? It's like, well, if you give them all these ideas, you're just giving them ammunition. I go, no. When you can repeat back to somebody what you've heard them say, that's not ammunition. When you ignore them, that's ammunition. And so we say stuff.
That's good, bro.
The truth is, many people have deconstructed because of politics. They just can't do it. They just can't go into church, and they just can't hear. They can't. They're around people who are tone deaf. And do I think they can mature sometimes? Sure. Do I think they're wrong sometimes? Sure. But that doesn't matter. This section of the book is, here's why people are deconstructing. And if you can't hear that, for me, it's just like, I think we've identified a place where you can grow. Let's just let's do some what do they call it? You need to be exposed to it more so that you can handle it. And you need to be in a room where you're not the boss. You need to be in the room where you're not the one talking. You need to be in the room that's more of a circle than a pulpit. And you need to listen. And
we're
I say
not
this from
looking for
experience.
agreement.
That's me.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not looking for
Yeah.
agreement.
We're not looking for agreement. We're looking
Hear 'em.
for understanding.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
Right.
I love that.
That's huge. And I mean, I've spent several elections, presidential elections, reminding people that we're actually citizens of another kingdom first. and then look around the room. I remember this early in, I think it was 2016. It's like, hey, after the election, and you got all sorts of different mindsets, and some people are rejoicing, some people are sorrowful, some people don't care. And I said, hey, look at least 5 people in the eye. There's people who voted Republican. There's people who voted Democrat. There's people who voted for Kanye. There's people who wrote in Snoopy. And there's people who didn't vote. So there's at least 5 different types of people in this room. And there's one thing we agree on is that we love Jesus and we belong to another kingdom. So I try to quash that political stuff. I mean, you can grow a very large church today in a Christian nationalist kind of mindset. But we're just not having it. I want to dive into the title. I'm gonna show people a little, which I love the artwork. I love the artwork on your cover. It's so intriguing. But Sandbox to Museum. Tell me about the title. It says, "What to do when the faith you knew doesn't work anymore."
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I fought for the title. Because it is intriguing, and some people don't like intriguing. They like hit me, put it on the nose kind of stuff. So thanks for that. Yeah, I think the metaphor is simply not all digging is the same. Not all digging is created equal. And so I can be a child who makes a sandcastle, and I could take my little Tonka truck and I can just vroom it to death, and it's fun and it's carefree. But the deal is the castle doesn't have any value. It's just sand, and we could build it again. Or I can be an archaeologist who takes out my tiny little brush and my air hose, and I know that there's something beautiful underneath the surface. And you might go, those two people are digging, but the intention's different, the goal is different. And so I want to move people from the sandbox to the museum where they found a gem. I love that red pull out on the on the cover. It's kind of this image of like, look what we found, And so I think more people will find gems if they believe that there's one to be found. And I think we will sort of temper our digging if we believe that we could wreck something precious if we're not careful. And so my call is, let's get digging. I'll go put my work clothes on. Let's go for it, but let's do it in a way that in a sense gives yourself the best chance of finding something beautiful. Because if you just go out there and Tonka truck this thing, you could wreck something beautiful.
Here will I sing. Oh, oh, oh. Man, Derek, I love doing this with you. Love what God is doing in and through our lives, the connection, the reconnection over these last years, what the favor in life on Rethinking God with Tacos, whether it's the Facebook group or the Zoom calls and the ones we have in the future, just life-giving, and a fulfillment of the vision that I had 9 years ago when we stepped away from pastoring full-time to start a Family Story Ministries. A Family Story Ministries was meant to create content catalytic for an encounter with the love of God. I mean, it was that simple. And it was very empowering for me to then lean into writing, lean into obviously speaking and teaching, and led to the start of this podcast almost 5 years ago. A Family Story is a nonprofit, and it's been the home for me for 9 years as we've leaned in. And
I remember you saying, coming out of COVID, that, hey guys, we started a podcast.
And you and Sarah were one of our earliest guests.
Yeah. And it definitely is content that is catalytic for an encounter with the love of God. We've experienced that by joining forces together.
Yep.
But I want all of our listeners to know that this is a listener-funded podcast, and Rethinking God with Tacos has kind of taken on a life of its own in the umbrella of a family story. But a family story is your livelihood, Jason. I get a salary from the church that I pastor, and I donate my time and volunteer my time to do this. But I want everybody to know that you can give to make Rethinking God with Tacos available to as many people as we can possibly make it available to. If this podcast has in any way blessed you, helped shape your rethinking journey, and been a safe place to experience community on the Facebook page, then I invite you to give, not out of compulsion or arm twisting, but out of joy and generosity. Give into a family story. You can do it at afamilystory.org. There's a giving function on there, and we invite you into partnership with us. It's a way that we can partner together to establish the kingdom of God through this podcast. And I love doing it with you, Jason. I really do.
Yeah, same here, man. Thank you. So grateful for those who have given and who blessed us and have prayed for us and partnered with us over the years. So love it. Love doing this with you, and we'll see you all soon. Yeah, and that's you speaking to, we have this conversation often. There's reactions and responses, and those that have been hurt, they often just take a Tonka truck to it and they just blow the whole thing up.
Yeah,
I have grace for that, and the Jesus that I know is still there walking with him.
Amen.
But I love that you're inviting people into, and that's what this book does. It invites us to have a conversation, first of all, and it is heartbreaking when people reject you just for saying, "Hey, I just am making room for we're already having the conversation." But I hate that they're having to have it outside of the building. Let's just have it here. Can we just invite this conversation in here, and then let's steward the love of God. Let's look for Jesus. Let's as you said, something precious. To me, I decided I can't change the language. It's called deconstruction. I didn't get to pick the title Christian either. So you know what I'm saying? That's what we're calling it. So let me go ahead and pastor those that in the way that I can, in the way that there's grace to do so that we do find the precious, so that we don't leave Jesus, so that we do discover the perfection of his love. And to me, we're then having a conversation about repenting. We're then having a conversation about rethinking who God is. I mean, that's what we do here, right? We the whole idea is he's better than our last best thought about him. And so let's rethink, let's rediscover, let's continue to dig, and let's do it with intentionality, that we're looking for that cornerstone. We're looking for that perfect theology upon which we can build our faith, and we can build our community and build our connections. You have this wow. I'm going to read something. Looking back, this is from the book, first chapter. I'm grateful for the stress testing of my faith, all the agitation of wondering, mulling and testing. I think it's an age-old, authentic, and even necessary part of the faith journey. And then you, of course, say, I've encountered a cultural eye roll in some Christian circles that seem to assume deconstructionist language is just a softer way of telling other Christians that they're walking away from the faith. This most definitely is not my story. And what I love about that is that that's most definitely not everyone's story. And there's so much grace in that, in what you've written there. Of course, you go on. I could keep reading. I'm not going to do that. But what I'd love for you to speak to is, man, I'm convinced he never leaves or forsakes us. I'm convinced that Jesus is an Emmaus Road stranger walking beside every one of us on our journey, even those who are reacting. He's there with us. He's endeavoring to reveal himself to us. But I'm thankful for pastors like yourself who are making room and putting language around it that is connected to our faith. So suddenly we take that deconstruction language, we say, for me, I'm like, let's connect it to our faith. Let's connect it to our journey. Let's appreciate we have brothers and sisters in and outside the institution that love Jesus dearly. And let's begin to understand what it is that they're actually deconstructing, what it is that they're actually trying to figure out. Some of it's going to get messy. You acknowledge that in the book. You have 5 sections. We could break through them. But you acknowledge that in the book that it's messy, and so you're trying to help people do it well, all for the purpose of finding Jesus. Talk to me about that right there, that place of saying, hey, this was my faith journey like 15 years ago. Like this was what I was figuring out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's great. I open with a story of from Edinburgh, Scotland, and so I just listened
Yes.
to one of the other episodes of somebody who's in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
That you guys had on. Yeah.
David Hewitt.
Yeah, I was 4 seconds from booking a ticket just to go and smell the air. I dearly love Edinburgh. So I kind of opened with this story of us participating in the Fringe Festival, which is like the largest arts fair in the world. People like Blue Man Group got their start there. There were 600. Last time we were there were 600 clubs in like a 4-mile radius. It's just wild. You know, a different busker every 20 feet or something like that. And long story short, we were just out there seeing what God would do, and we were playing speed dating nights, and I mean, it was the wildest time. But God did stuff, you know, and people started following Jesus, and so we at least knew that we had to connect them with somebody because. We can get into this in a second maybe, but the gospel for me these days, the best way I can say it is get in here. That's the gospel to me, is get in here.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to bring people to Jesus without anything to get in. And so we tried to find, you know, pastors, believers, different groups, whether it was a YWAM group or, you know, some group, just like, hey, here's some other believers, you know, and kind of pass them off. And long story short, the one we passed them off to in our first meeting said something like, well, hey, you know, you can believe in evolution and still be a Christian. And 15 years ago, that spooked me. That spooked me. And I still don't know all that he meant. I don't know if he was opening up for, you know, old earth, new earth. I don't know.
Sure.
You know, I guess I could have more of a conversation with him about it, but it was embarrassing to some degree how that rocked my faith, how that sort of showed me something, all or nothing, black or white. You can call it whatever you want, those sorts of things. And so it really spooked me, and I thought, oh my, you know, been following Jesus for some time. I should probably, this thing needs to sophisticate. Needs to get more nuanced. There needs to evolve. Something needs to evolve.
Yeah.
It took a Big Bang conversation for me to realize my faith needed to evolve. That's poetic. I like it.
Yeah.
We should write books together, Derek.
When I use that word.
Yeah. I love that. It was by design that you said that. Anyhow, all that to say, that sort of a thing, you know, and I grew up in a house. My father was mildly liberal, and my mom was mildly conservative. And you know, we were in this wild church. If you're familiar with Seventh-day Adventist, that in 1890 something was started by a female prophet. 1890, a church started by a female prophet. But then by the time I got into it, was you know, extremely legalistic, et cetera, et cetera. So I kind of lived in this world, and then I actually came to faith in a wild charismatic setting. If you're familiar with like Mike Bickle and IHOP and these sorts of expressions, right? Bethel, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and then I kind of settled into, you know, charismatic light sort of thing. And, you know, now I'm sort of in a stream that's really excited about making disciples, et cetera. All that to say, I had all these experiences that helped me navigate the, oh no, we just passed this street kid off to somebody who says they can be they can believe in evolution, still be a Christian. But I had enough of this give and take, this push and pull. And what I realized was that very few Christians around me had that. They had not been pulled in two directions ever. And so the minute they felt that, it felt bad. And what I realized was I'm very comfortable in this environment. I'm very comfortable debating. I'm very comfortable. And so what I realized was, you know, maybe a part of what I could do is sort of give people those experiences, whether it's in houses or whether it's in meetings or if it's on the street or whatever, to experience that, because that's what's going to sharpen you, that's what's going to grow you, that's what's going to help you. And when I started to realize there are communities that are fine with that. They're just ones who hate the church.
Right.
And when you have that conviction, then you start to go, well, wait, I want to have those conversations. I love the church, and for me, I love the church. But it comes from a place where I say, we were part of planting a mega church. It became, a few thousand people in a few years, all the stuff. Yeah. I love that place. I love that place. God did so many great things. I love what happened in my living room last night. I love our little church here in this storefront. So when I say I love the church, and someone goes, I did it, I just couldn't do the celebrity pastor, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fine. Because what I've realized is that a lot of people have left a sliver of the faith, thinking that they're leaving the whole faith. And I guess I'm here to say, like, you just left a sliver. I think the politics sucks. Like, cool. Yeah, there's other groups maybe in your neighborhood who are not going to do that. Okay, wow. The lights and the smoke machines. Oh, that's fine. The church down the street can't afford them. That sort of. So I love the church, and for me, ecclesia, the gathering. I think the church is the greatest chance we have of putting the love of God on display so that people can see it. Yes, God loves us as individuals, but it sure takes the friction. It sure takes the restoration. It sure takes the family for my neighbors to go, that's something different. They find happy people at the yoga studio. They have a harder time finding happy communities. And so the gathering, ecclesia, to me is the beautiful thing. So if it's 5 people in your living room, let's go. Fine. Yeah. That's great. And if it's thousands, sure.
Yeah. Jason and I are pretty good at both and thinking. We've had to be, but I like your stance on the church. I would actually amp it up another degree. Said I love the church that Jesus built. I'm not real fond of the structures that man has built in many ways. That actually are anti-Christ, that prevent people from asking questions, because certainty becomes the highest. Yes, certainty becomes the highest faith, as opposed to. We firmly believe that a faith that can be questioned is a true faith, and doubt is not the enemy of faith. Certainty is the enemy of faith. We can't live a life of faith if we don't live in some type of mystery. And man, I'm going to echo what you said. The church is the church that Jesus built. The church is God's plan A, and He doesn't have a plan B. Yeah. Amen. So let's just throw that out there. But it may not be what has been represented as church. I have lots of neighbors who have lots of church stories all over the map. And it's understandable that they don't want to be a part of that anymore. But they do enjoy this relationship with Jesus. They enjoy following Jesus. And they enjoy being in community. The way that I've said it to our congregation is, church should be like a rock tumbler. You're coming in here, you got a ton of jagged edges, we all do. But as we rub up against one another, as that rock tumbler gets going, you stay faithful to stay connected, even though you may disagree with things. It's not about agreement all the time. It's about understanding. We're not going to lose connection because we have friction. Yeah. And so to hang in there, and that's really where love becomes our highest goal. And love becomes the singular command of Jesus. He said, a new commandment I give to you, love one another the way I have loved you. By this, all will know you're my followers, you're my disciples. So loving well becomes the new evangelism. And it's not necessarily the highest purpose to get someone in a church, get them saved, get them baptized. It's the highest purpose of the church to love well. But I agree with
Yeah.
you. The gathering is so necessary, and that's where it's like I'm navigating this as a pastor. I've been a pastor for 20 years. I've done it bad, and now we're doing it healthier. So I think we have similar stories. I can resonate completely with what you're saying. The difference now, though, is that I'm not seeing insiders and outsiders. I'm seeing everyone as insiders, and they're either awake or asleep. And that little bit of language change, it starts waking me up to the reality of, oh, I can see Christ in the face of every person that I love well, that I serve. Jesus said, if you've done it to the least of these, you've done it to me. So, that takes the separation out of it. And then begins to allow love to do what it does best, and that's never fail.
Wow.
So, man, I'm really excited when I hear people who can live well in the both and world, because then it doesn't push away the mega church down the street. Because there's some people that man, that's just going to resonate for them, and that's okay, that's fine. But neither then is the church structure allowed to say, well, you're not a church because you're just meeting in a living room with 5 people.
Right.
Well, that's just not true. So,
amen. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not even really asking a question. I'm just really resonating with your both and thinking here, and wish more people would adapt to, and I wish more pastors would adapt to being accessible. And being open to navigating questions with people. I guarantee you, even their own staff, I guarantee their own staff has questions. And if you don't have an environment where people are allowed to ask questions and discuss and navigate things, then you don't really have a church.
No. Yeah, I think the way I addressed this a little bit in the book was, wherever there's a culture of certainty, there's also a culture of hypocrisy. The connection there is, if I'm scared to say I don't get it, then I'm going to lie to you to keep my job. I'm going to lie to you so I'm not kicked out of the church. And so we have to be really careful about that. And so one way that we've sort of thought this through in the last few years is we won't necessarily talk about the beliefs of our church. We'll talk about the teachings of our church. Because the truth of the matter is not everyone who comes here believes the exact same thing, and but there are some close-handed issues for us as a Christian church, where we say that's the only thing we'll teach because that's the thing what those of us who preach believe. We're not going to preach anything we don't believe, and so what I think that's done is it's opened itself up for people to not have to put on the facade of certainty, or they're going to get kicked out. We just say, hey, here's the teachings of the church. If you go through the podcast, you're only going to find this going on. Hopefully that's helped. That one thing I wanted to, one thing you got me thinking about as far as the gathering is concerned is, I kind of been resonating on this for maybe a couple of months. I don't remember where I picked up, but the idea is this. Oftentimes, my neighbor, who I'm actually called to love, who Jesus said they'll know if you're my disciples if you love one another, that person is fuzzy, that person is ambiguous, and I can't give you a name or an age or an address. But my enemy, their face is crystal clear. I see their face when I close my eyes. I know where they live. I know what they've said. I follow all their social media posts, etc. The way of Jesus for healthy gathering gives us the opportunity to put faces and names to the people we're supposed to love. And what I hope happens is the longer I follow Jesus, my enemies' faces get fuzzier. I'm like, I don't know who's against me. I don't know who's got problems with me. I don't know who I'd punch in the mouth if I had to. That gets fuzzier. That gets more opaque. That gets more just kind of like, I don't know. And I think the world that wants to creep inside of me wants to do the exact opposite. It wants to clarify all my enemies and make me be loving to people who aren't actually there, people who don't actually have needs, people who I don't actually have to help with the gas bill, people I don't actually have to help because, as I say in the book, messy people are messy. and it's hard.
Yeah.
But that's at least half of the curriculum of Jesus.
I love that. We have this conversation we have here where the more dogmatic we become in love, and Jesus being love, the less dogmatic we are about all the other things. It actually gives us liberty to be in any place and actually operate in constraint in the context of consent. And what you're describing to me is this profound thing that takes place at the cross. Father, forgive them; they know not what they do. I was this was the shift for me, where faces become blurry. I love that picture, man. That's a really cool imagery around this idea. I'm in a situation where I whether I would have used the phrase enemy, I certainly would have used the phrase antagonist. Like I was in a situation where I was being forced to deal day in, day out with somebody else's mess in a dishonoring way towards me and my family, and it was just a nonstop. And so I get away for the weekend to go to this conference, and I'm at this conference, and I think I've escaped this situation at the conference. And it's me and Jesus, and we're going to worship, and it's going to be wonderful. And I walk into this room, and there they are, these, and they're waving me over. They've saved me a seat, and I think to myself, "Oh God, my whole weekend blown. Like here I am." And so I'm overwhelmed. I go into the restroom. I'm exhausted. I go into the restroom. A prophet friend of ours walks up. This is where it takes place, at the urinal. And so I'm there, just, so we've got the story.
Saul
I'm there.
in the cave, relieving himself.
Yeah. He walks right next to me. His name's Robin McMillan. I don't know if you know that name, but actually John Mark McMillan's dad.
Oh,
and
wow.
So
cool.
he's standing next to me, pastors a church, and he says, Jace, like, typical prophetic. Like, no, I can't. We're just looking. Jace, you know what God's telling me today? You know what he's been telling me lately? And I go, what's he saying, Robin? And he says, Jesus forgave him, for they know not what they do. And I was like, explosion. Grace came into me, and I suddenly realized, I realized that perspective there. My wife would say it this way. Brene Brown says it this way: that everyone's doing the best they can.
Amen. I believe it.
And when you realize that, man, their faces become. It changes how you think of deconstruction. It changes how you think of your neighbor. It changes how you think of your enemy. Because suddenly you realize, man, Jesus on a cross, they sure seemed like they knew what they were doing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And somehow he was able to see through their broken places, through their flawed theologies, through their religious obsessions with their ideologies, and say they don't know what they're doing, and grace was released. And I feel that on this book. I feel that on this conversation. I love that God is raising up pastors and leaders, whether they're in the traditional sense or otherwise, that are navigating that place, that we're learning how to be restrained in love, learning how to, because there was a liberty for me, first of all, but then it also empowered me to go back into the room and engage. They weren't enemies, but engage with them in a way that was life-giving for them, life-giving for me, and the ball gets moved, right? We just moved the whole game down. We're making progress. I had a question. I'd gone to look. Go ahead if you want to say yes, and this is the time.
That's beautiful.
Go ahead.
Thanks for the example of going back in the room. I hope this book it helps people go back in the room and to revisit it. We were reading. A friend and I this morning. We were reading out of Titus, and the idea, Paul's pretty like hard on him. He's like, they're liars, blah, 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 and the thought occurred to me that whatever you're soaking in is not, you can be anti the things of Jesus because of the thing you're soaking in, and it's not a conscious effort. And I think historically, all the stuff that's happening on Crete, they lied. It was part of their culture. They just were liars. No one thought I'm a liar. They just lied. That was their culture.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot to what Paul's doing there and his ability to actually be contextual and all that sort of stuff. But it reminded me of what you're saying, where it's like, when I have that moment of forgive them, they know not what they do, oftentimes I can sort of pan out and just go, I see what they're soaking in. And so so it's less about like, you did this intentionally to harm me, and more like, you need to be restored to your right place as a son or a daughter. And then your behavior will change. But the main issue is that you're hiding. Why are you hiding? That sort of a thing. So, there's places in the book where I say, everyone's going to hate at least half of this thing. There's some places in the book where we talk about what are sort of the cultural pillars that Christian deconstruction came out of.
That's part 4, right?
Yeah. In other words, for a lot of my friends who are stuck, what are you soaking in? I want you to see what you're soaking in. And one of them is indignation. Just a value set that says, if I'm not red-faced and pissed off, I don't care. And I just want to say that's anti-kingdom. And I think Greg Boyd says some great things about this. I've got my own thoughts about the place of anger in the kingdom, but I just want to make sure I don't whitewash that and say this is righteous anger. I'm not so sure that we understand what's happening there. So I want to stay as far away from that as I can. And so, cool. That section just like, hey, make sure you're not soaking in indignation. I know it's tough, If anyone knows about church hurt, it's pastors. You know what I mean? And so I just want to make sure I'm not soaking in something unknowingly. I look back a couple hundred years in this nation. If you feel like every person had a balanced view of slavery and just chose to enslave, I think you're probably wrong. They were probably soaking in that. And
their cultural context,
their cultural context sort of did its thing to them.
That's really insightful and really helpful. I think that's the part of the deconstruction movement that scares and turns off a whole lot of people, because it's a reactionary thing that is coming out of hurt, but it is reactionary. And so it's almost, I used to say as a charismatic, until I discovered there's no separation in the nature of God, that my desperation was the high watermark of spiritual maturity. That was what I was raised in. So then you have to ramp up this. You're constantly having to be desperate. Otherwise, you're not a authentic Christian. And I think that what you're touching on in indignation is the same idea. Indignation's a real feeling, but we have such a dualistic thing taking place in our culture right now that you almost have a generation that thinks if they're not mad, that justice isn't being done. If they're not actually and instead of the idea that Jesus took the whole day to braid a whip, you know what I'm saying? That when there was a moment where he goes into there and he addresses the issues, he's doing it in control of himself as a response in the context of cruciform love, never actually stepping outside of God in Christ reconciling the world to himself. So I love that, man. I love that insight.
This is some great thoughts. Don't get me started on people who use Jesus cleansing the temple as a justification for their outrageous anger.
Sure.
I love those conversations. But
I'll be deleting
what are you
some
gonna do with
podcasts
James
from some years ago.
Yeah, when James comes along and he's like, hey, human anger does not produce the righteousness of God. It never will. It won't. It has no capacity for that. And of course, there's things that we would term righteous indignation, but it has to come back to a love response, because they will know you are my followers by your love. And so one of the big shifts for me was just, what would love do? What would love do? What would love do? With Jesus being the high watermark of what love would do, and then bringing it into the context of the century that I live in. Jesus comes along and he rattles the context of even Judaism by saying, hey, you've heard it said, but I say, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth. I'm going to say, love your enemies, do good to those, that despitefully use you and treat you poorly. And so he shifted that he came out and kind of destroyed their religion. Well, what areas of that are we going to be engaged in our context, in our world? I think it has to be done with the response of love, because this has to be the key trademark, of every follower of Jesus. And so do we get it right all the time? Of course not. Of course not. You said earlier there's messy people or something. I forget how you said it, but it was like, yeah, no, people are just messy. They're not just messy people. It's just people. People are messy.
Wow.
So then the role of the church, to me, the role of the church is to be the church that Jesus is building in the context of the culture that you're currently within. And it's going to be countercultural in a lot of ways, but the church has embraced the culture so much, especially politically in America. I'm talking about church in America. Okay. The church in America has embraced this political spectrum. And we had Kristen Dumais on, who wrote Jesus and John Wayne quite a while back. And
wow.
I read that book when it first came out, and it was like a history of my personal experience growing up in the church.
Whoa.
And she is a historian, so it's not like, she's documenting stuff and getting her sourcing right. And people went ballistic over that book. And it's because their means of producing the kingdom was through either the Republican or Democrat Party.
Wow.
That was their means. They forgot that they're citizens of another kingdom and strangers, to this context that we live in. We're supposed to be living counterculture. And I believe that's hopefully where the church is heading. It doesn't look like it, but I'm a super optimistic guy. I'm not a guy that thinks Jesus is on the throne room
too.
twiddling his thumbs like, oh crap, the church is so screwed up. No, he's seated confidently, knowing that what he started, he'll finish. And so I just want to be on the side of those that love well, and then be, like Jason said, not have to be dogmatic about this thing that I am most dogmatic about, and that is love is the identifying mark of a follower of Jesus. And so I even think, the term Christian is in such disarray and disrepair in our culture right now. You read the word Christian in any, mainstream media, New York Times, whatever, it's not usually ever positive, because they're throwing Westboro Baptist in with, Mother Teresa. And it's like, this is not what we would call Christian. And that's why I've even started using the terminology just follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm not against being called a Christian. Of course not. It's been happening since Antioch, but it wasn't a real positive term even then. It was just trying to put people in some kind of a box. At least when we say follower of Jesus, we identify a smidgen of humility that says, I'm following someone who is greater than I.
Wow.
And I'm aspiring to become like this person. Ooh. That speaks volumes to my friends who hate the word Christian and have been, destroyed by Christians. And so I don't know. Now I'm just ranting, but I love it. To me, coming back to the title of your book, I love the idea that sometimes maybe in early stage deconstruction, people are just chucking all the sand out of the box. They're not even mining for anything. They're like, not only that, I'm going to get out of the box and never mine here again. But I love this concept of that in the brokenness and in the pain, we can mine gems. We can find amazing truths if we stick with it. And the only thing that is going to help people stick with it is that they have a genuine love for one another. That's the only way you're going to stick with people. So what would love do became that question that I just would try to ask in every situation, and then try to let the Spirit lead me in what that looks like, It may look different in different situations. Love also speaks the truth, and so you have to gauge this life, and especially personal interactions with people, on a basis of being a good listener. And you said that earlier about taking the time to really, truly listen to people. And I think as we're doing that, man, the Spirit of God, the Spirit of love within us is helping shape and craft a response that will melt through the fear of their heart and bring them to an understanding and an awakening of Christ in you, the hope of glory. To me, that's just a better gospel.
Amen.
But the church is God's plan A. And I love that. We're not giving up on the church.
Yeah. Yeah. We got Why People Deconstruct, Part 2, How to Avoid the Common Pitfalls, Part 3, What Can We Learn from the Deconstruction Movement, Part 4, Some of the Cultural Pillars of Modern-Day Christian Deconstruction, and then Part 5, How to Stop the Bleeding, A Way Forward for You and Your Church. What I loved about this, and I want to maybe have you speak a little bit to that section of the book, is I described your book as a pastor's a pastor walking humbly with his people, first and foremost those that God has given to you to lead, but then on a larger level. I know this started with messages you were giving at your church. Like that's how this whole thing happened, right? This whole book came out of you endeavoring to help your church make room for everyone at the table, not necessarily step beyond what we know Jesus to be, but make room and be able to listen. What I told my wife when I was editing it is I said, what I appreciate is that you're making room for people to actually ask questions in the safety of community.
Yep.
And one of the greatest broken places, and what we're finding right now, Derek and I, is we found ourselves suddenly doing life online, but not just online, but with a bunch of folks who ended up in one way, shape, or form being cast out of the community. And the pain and the extra sorrow and the unneeded aspects of that journey. How do we ask these questions in the context of community where there is someone trustworthy to bounce stuff off of, where we can throw the wildest ideas at someone and they can say, there's something there, but let's talk about what Jesus is like. Let's get back to that and let's revisit that. And so I'm thankful for that. How to Stop the Bleeding, A Way Forward for You and Your Church. Speak a little bit to that last chapter.
Yeah.
And what's burning in your heart for that.
Yeah.
And if I've got anything wrong, tell me, man.
No. It's great.
Jason. Okay.
No, I'm ready to rewrite it with your words.
No, sir.
Oh, come on, man.
I'll just say from the jump, this. Pastors are going to read this, but this really, we put a lot of time and effort. Jason, I know you know this, a lot of time and effort that this is not a pastor book.
Right.
This is a follower of Jesus book.
Yeah.
And so that last chapter especially, or that last section there especially, is sort of like, don't march into the pastor's office and tell him what the church needs to do. You get started right now.
Yeah.
To do the things that bring you joy, do the things that match your gifting, etc. But let's get moving on this. And so, how to stop the bleeding, how to do this. I think we come full circle to the soaking metaphor. We need a culture that soaks in understanding. We need to have a culture that soaks in both and. We need a culture that soaks in. We don't have to be twins to be friends.
Good.
That's the hard news for all of us, because there is no quick fix. There's no curriculum. It is a cultural shift, and I feel like it's important to say a couple of things. Number one, which was an edit from a friend. I had 9 friends read the book across
Good.
all different positions in life, race, et cetera.
It's great.
And that was my first. So. What I gave you, Jason, the first thing you saw had already come through 9 of my friends who stepped all over my toes in the best way. And so
that's why it was good, my friend.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But one of the sort of notes on that was, hey, there are people who can't find someone within their community. They can't find them. And so one of the edits was, hey, you might need to go to the church next door to wrestle with these things, but my encouragement is to stay in the community you're in. And maybe even wrestle outside of it until you've helped build a culture that itself can handle it. And I think one of the unfair critiques of any organization, any group, is that you judge everybody on your experience with one person. And so, to be sure, in our church, there are people who cannot handle these conversations. Depending on my amount of sleep and caloric intake, I can't handle them at sometimes. So what I'm encouraging people to do is, hey, ask around, maybe ask the pastor, say, man, I got big questions and they feel really heavy and important to me. And I'm not trying to blow up the middle school small group or something, but who can I talk to? I think the church that Jesus is building, to use your language, it's his heart to put at least one of them in every community. And we know, man, when you deal with some stuff, you go. And so I guess the long play is, I want more and more people in our church to be able to have hard conversations, but I'm not sending someone who has a hard conversation to every person in the church because they're not gifted in that way. They're not interested in that way. One of the people I think right now who would do a terrible job at sort of doing this is the most gifted hospitality person in our church.
Right.
It's not her thing. Yeah. She's growing in it. She's learning in it. She sees the value in it. And so let's just be honest about that, don't go to that person who is going to stink at it as a justification for the church has no answers for me. We all know people who are stuck in dogmatism. We know people who are stuck in they're afraid of new thoughts, blah, blah, blah. Don't go to them. Yeah. Let's ask around and find the person. So I think the way forward is the long play. Let's create the culture and let's start where we're at is sort of the thing. And then once we get there, once maybe a leader gets a vision for it, or the leader, honestly, I think more than gets a vision for it, my strategy is often I got to get a taste for it. And so I have to experience the joy that comes when someone is reconciled, for me to fight for reconciliation.
Love that.
I have to taste the beauty of someone seeing both sides before I want to create that community.
Yeah. And Jared, I like what you're saying. What I do hear you saying is that many times when people say, well, I've been hurt by the church, what they really mean is I've been hurt by these people within this context called church. And of course, in some of those cases, it actually is the pastor. And in that case, it's probably not going to be best to hang around.
Sure.
But, begin to start with where you can start, which is you. Yeah. I love that, because it just brings you back to this personal responsibility. But as much as it depends on me, live at peace with all men. God. You can't do it as much as it depends on everybody else, because you're never going to have peace. But as much as it depends on you. And Jason and I have found too that when people, it's almost magnetic. It's like poles.
It is.
Begin to start pulling. Maybe it starts with a book. For me, it started with a Brad Jerzak book, or actually go way back to a Joseph Prince book that opened my eyes to grace coming out of the Word of Faith context. The prosperity Word of Faith context. Man, it was like, whoa. Grace is more than a definition. It's actually a person, and his name is Jesus, and I really need to get to know more about that. Well, that didn't disconnect me from the community I was in. And ideologically, that community actually began to start embracing that message as well. And so I think that faithfulness to human beings is what Jesus modeled, and that's part of following him. So I'm not going to give up on people, including myself. So I like that. I like that, you can't just throw the blanket statement out there that, oh, the church hurt me. It's because it's like saying that, the NBA hurt me. Well, which team, which club, which let's drill it down, and let's find out where that source of brokenness and hurt is, and then let's let Jesus deal with that in you. There's a little more personal responsibility that I'm reading into the things that you're talking about, and I like that. I really like it.
Yeah. Another way to say it would be personal opportunity. You have the opportunity to grow this thing. You don't need anyone's permission.
So
Please,
good.
God, do not let anybody in church ministry make an announcement. May their hearts be stirred.
Yeah.
And may they start something. Start where they're at, you know.
It's good. It's
Love
good.
it.
Jared, I'm chuckling. You've mentioned a couple of times 50% of the people that read this book will love it, and 50% might hate it. And I thought a couple of times that you said that I thought you've already experienced some pushback.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you. I'm curious. Well, I might do this off the air. Even this podcast might be a way by which you experience some pushback.
Oh, yeah, I hear you, Jason.
And yet I'm so grateful that you're here, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to have the conversation. I mentioned to Derek that you and I talked at some point a couple months back, and I just love the generous way in which you will interact with me and us here today. Just thankful you're here, man. Thankful that you are willing to dive into a subject in pastoring, because that's what we need. Those that are actually saying, hey, I'm in it. I believe in it. I love the church. I love Jesus. This is what's happening in our culture. Let's have the conversation, and let's be willing to hear each other. And then let's keep building. Let's keep leaning into this love. Let's keep leaning into the nature of Jesus's perfect theology. So grateful for
Beautiful.
that.
Thank you so much.
And praying grace and wonder over this book. We have to talk tacos.
Oh yeah.
That's in the title.
Yeah, Jared, we need your taco story. So give us that mouth-watering taco story or it could be horrible. I don't know. I do not judge another man's taco story. He can go with it how he wills.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Getting all King James on taco stories.
I did hear a girl the other day. She said, "I think hot dogs are German tacos," and I thought, "Wow." I mean,
Jason
I
and I
didn't
have
sleep for 3 days. That
Jason
really
and
blew
I
me.
have developed an entire theory around that exact concept. So
Okay,
don't get us
good.
started. We
Yeah.
want to hear your story, my friend.
Good.
Every culture has a taco.
Yeah,
That's right.
I love that. I
The
love
German
that.
taco.
Yeah, German taco. Well, I'll tell you about the most unique taco joint that I love. It's called In a Tub. In a Tub. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so what we do here is we get our meat and our onions and all that sort of stuff rocking. We put that in the corn tortilla. Right?
Nice. Yeah.
We pinch it closed like it's, like a dumpling or something.
Uh-huh.
Then we deep fry that whole bit there.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
We pull it out. We get our tongs. We open it just enough. And we pour powdered macaroni cheese into the taco.
Okay.
So in a tub, the whole taco goes in the tub, I think is sort of the idea here. You need to get in the tub when you're done, because standard operating procedure is you tie a napkin around your elbow, because that grease is going to travel all the way down here. And it's amazing. I eat them by, the half dozen. So they're out by the airport. Yeah.
Out
they're
by
out
the
by the
airport. And it's mac and cheese, the what is that, the dust? What do they call that?
Just the powder. Just
the powder?
cheese powder. The cheese powder. Yep. And what happens there is it gets velvety, because it's talking to the grease. You see what I'm saying?
Come on.
And if your mom's there, you put lettuce in it or something. But pretty much,
Anybody listening to this right now, the way that Jared just described that taco is the way he writes. It's very creative. It's very fun. I love your style. You'll laugh out loud. You'll learn something new. Velvety, it's velvety because what did you say? It mixes with the grease. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, there's a whole dance in there. It's a whole
There you go.
ecosystem. It's got its own disco ball. It's like
It's awesome.
it's just good.
Its own
Hey, it's been a
ecosystem.
joy. Thank you guys for having me. And
that is a first. I know I'd like to acknowledge all of our firsts, but that is a first where somebody has had a taco story that included Kraft macaroni and cheese packer.
Yeah. And I'm in. I'm all in on that.
I think there should be some type of prize for that, for the first mention.
That's
Because
good.
I'm going to go try that. I'm actually going to try that. I'm going to try and make that happen.
Yes,
That's
it's
awesome.
so good.
Hey, Jared.
My first thought when I was coming on the podcast was I was gonna be just making street tacos while we talked.
We'd have been in on that too. That's the story. The first podcast we ever did, I tried to eat a taco while we interviewed, and I never want to edit that again. So, but that was out the window quick. Hey, how do people find you? How do they find the book? How do they keep up with you?
Yeah, that's great. So I'm on Instagram, just added TikTok. Okay, wow.
Nice.
Whole new world over there. And Facebook at Jared Scholz on all those. And then jaredscholz.com has kind of got a landing page there. And then the book, it'll be out November 14th, and that's on Amazon. Yeah, there's a picture of it. Amazon and Kindle and, Goodreads and all that sort of stuff. I know they're doing a giveaway on Goodreads, so if you're a Goodreads person, they're doing giveaways over there so you can get the book cheap or faster. There's some incentive I don't understand, but all those platforms.
Love it.
Jared, thank you. Thanks for being on today. And we, man, I love your heart, bro. I love what you carry for the church. I think it's the same DNA as the church that Jesus is building, and I love that about you. So keep it up, brother.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you,
Bless
guys.
you, man.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so glad you joined us on Rethinking God with Tacos. You can find me, Jason Clark, online at afamilystory.org, where I encourage you to sign up on our mailing list. We send out an email twice a month letting you know about new podcasts, articles, and new books or products that we have coming out. Plus, occasionally I'll keep you up on my schedule where I'm traveling. My Twitter handle is @JasonClarkIs. I'm on Instagram under the same handle, and you can find me on Facebook as well.
Yeah, and my name is Derek Turner. Jason and I love that you're listening to us. Thank you for all your feedback. Please write in, let us know what's going on in your life. But we are pursuing a mission to help people rethink God, and we thank you for being a part of it. You can find me at Pastor Derek T on all the socials. And then, of course, I pastor a church here in Charlotte, North Carolina called River Church, rivercharlotte.com. Come and join us. We'd love to have you.
Hey, all of these podcasts are available on all the platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google.
Yeah. Hey, make sure and share, and throw a review out there.
Let people know.
We love good reviews on the podcast. It helps people find us.
That's right.
So if this isn't a podcast that you enjoy, then please promote it, share it, give it a good 5-star rating.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Hey, love doing this journey with you, praying grace and wonder